Hello, first grade families, and welcome to the January Parent Portal Part 2. So if you watched the first part, I was explaining to you some of the things we're going to discuss. So please follow along as I go a little deeper into what we are going to talk about for this month. The first topic for our Parent Portal was M-Class. M-Class is the reading assessment that we use to assess your children at the beginning of the year, the middle of the year, and the end of the year. Students are just upcoming on the middle of year assessment, so as soon as they return to school, they will start taking this M-Class test. Before I go into actually what the test is a little bit, I do want to explain to you how the students take the test. So each teacher gets their own testing day, and they will separate kids into other classes. So you might hear your students saying, I was in Miss Jules' class today, or Miss Lee's class today, and that's because we separate children because this is a test that students take one-on-one. And because it's one-on-one, you may not have students taking the test on the same day. So we have about a 2 or 3 week window, which we will start as students return, but it's going to take us a while to individually assess each student. Something to also note is that your homeroom teacher is not going to be the person assessing your child. So for example, everybody in my class is going to be assessed by a different first grade teacher. And this is just to make sure that they can read with someone they are familiar with, but also someone that they are not familiar with, because if they have those reading skills really strong, they should be able to do it with anyone. So now for the nitty-gritty of the test, the main focus where you can help at home as we're getting ready to take this assessment is first, please have students read, but second is really to focus on the text evidence. I have a little Mickey detective here because we talk about text evidence in class a lot. This middle of the year assessment is not only going to assess the students' reading, but they are going to have 2 written comprehension questions. Students have to pass both of those written comprehension questions in order to pass the level. So a great way to practice at home is asking your students any question about the book and having them go back and find it in the book. When they take this assessment, they are given the book and as much time as they need, but we are encouraging them to please find the answer in the book, use the question in your answer, and if you do the weekly homework, that's also great practice. Next, we're going to discuss our January standards that we have left in the next couple of weeks. So we have written comprehension, and that's to help students get ready for their M-Class test. We are working on time in math to the hour and half hour. We are writing with details and finishing up our how-to unit, and our new science unit is going to be about rocks, pebbles, sand, and silt. And this will transition into a new IB unit that deals with rocks and sand and other earth materials in February. So let's look at our math first, since we've kind of already discussed the written comprehension aspect. First, here are some vocabulary words that you can practice with your kiddos at home that we are learning in school and that they need to know. So we are teaching them about the 2 different types of clock. Here is the analog clock, and here is the digital clock. These are terms that we're using with the students, and we do want them to know the difference. The analog clock is the one that has the hour and minute hand, and the digital clock is the one that tells you the time. And we are focusing on these 2 dots right here so that students know when they are writing a time in a digital way that they're putting those dots. Because without those dots, it would be just a number and not a time. The last 2 vocabulary words I did mention briefly are the hour and the minute hand. So we are practicing knowing that the hour hand is the shorter hand and the minute hand is the longer hand. A trick that I've taught the students is that hour is a shorter word, that's why it's the shorter hand, and minute is a longer word, and that's why it's the longer hand. So it's just another trick to help them remember the difference between the hour and the minute. If you are going to color code hour and minute hands at home, please try to stick with red and blue because those are the colors that our clocks at school have. If not, you can just practice with both of them in the color black. So the hardest concept for telling time in first grade is telling time to the half hour. So I'm going to talk about two things you can do at home to help your students. The first thing, and we have discussed this in class, is that when you are telling time to the half hour, the hour hand is actually not explicitly on a number. It's kind of in between. So we talk about the clock as a race, and up here where I put this little red mark is the start and the finish line. So if they are thinking about racing around the clock, I want them to look at that hand and say, has it arrived to the 2 yet? No. So since this hand right here is pointing in between the 1 and the 2, but it hasn't gotten to the 2 yet, we would call that 1:30. Another thing that's kind of tricky for some students is understanding why do we call the minute hand pointing down at the 6, why do we call that 30? So right here is an image of something that we did in class, and it's something you can also do at home, is showing the students the breakdown that there's 5 minutes in between each of those digits, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So we used Unifix cubes and we counted them, and when you start at 12 and count all the way down to 6, you find that there are 30 minutes or 30 objects. That's why we call it 30 when the minute hand is pointing down. But sometimes having individual objects to count helps students to understand that. Students do need to be able to tell time to the hour and half hour, but also draw it. That's why I have this blank clock here for you. So I might ask students to draw 2:30. If a student draws the minute hand here and the hour hand here, that's actually incorrect, because as I stated before, we're not looking for the hour hand to be pointing right at the hour. It should be in between. So to show 2:30, students are expected to draw that hour hand aiming in between that 2 and the 3. And then of course the minute hand being on the 30. So that's something you can practice at home with your first graders, especially when it comes to telling time to the half hour. In writing, and I'm going to try to make this quick, we are finishing up a how-to unit, and we are going to be writing how to build a snowman. So things that we are really focusing on are details. All of the students now have been working really hard on handwriting, punctuation, spacing, and getting their ideas out on paper. But now we're wanting to take that writing and expand it, add details, add amazing words, and add their own personality. So for example, how to build a snowman. If students are writing, first you make a big ball, then you make a middle ball, then you make a small ball, and decorate it, there's nothing wrong with that, but we're looking for more details in that writing. I want students to slow down and really think about, before you even go outside, first you put on, your snow clothes and your gloves. Then you go outside and bend in the snow and roll a big ball. So we're really focusing on slowing down when we write and adding as many details as possible to make our writing more interesting. Our new science unit is going to be rocks, pebbles, sand, and silt. We're going to do a number of fun science experiments. We're going to practice sorting rocks, feeling rocks, using our 5 senses. We'll be using some vocabulary words such as smooth, rough, fine, hard. We are going to learn about the 3 different types of rock: igneous, sedimentary, and metamorphic. And students will learn to know the difference between these 3 types of rocks, and we'll have some fun hand motions to make it easier to remember, and also how rocks are formed, how sand is formed, and some more concepts like that. The last thing I want to discuss for our January parent portal is the NKT, which stands for the Number Knowledge Test. This is a brand new test for first grade this year, and it is another test that is done one-on-one, and it is done with your homeroom teacher. So I will test each student in my class one at a time, and it's assessing students on their overall number knowledge. So it starts pretty basic. Can they count? Can they show how many objects? If I said show me 10, can they draw 10, or can they move 10 cubes? And then it kind of builds up the number knowledge ladder to see, are they using the math concepts that we learn in a mental math sort of way. So 2 things that we are working on in whole group and also in team time are what I call triangle math and then mental math. So we'll look at the triangle first. One of the questions they ask students is they will put a number at the top, let's say 12, and then they will also put two numbers in each of the other corners. So I've put 8 in this corner and 15 in this corner. So students are shown the triangle and they are asked which of these two numbers is closer to the number at the top. So what we're expecting students to do is understand which of the two numbers, 8 or 15, is closer to 12 on a number line. And this is something we have practiced a great deal in class. We do it almost every morning. And I've shown them how to do this on a number line with their fingers. You can count forwards, you can count backwards, but basically can they use their number knowledge to connect these numbers? So what we're looking for them to answer is to basically say that 15 is closest. And then there is a follow-up question of how did you know that? And we want students to explain that 12 and 15 are only 3 steps away. They could say, I put 12 in my head and counted on 13, 14, 15. They could say, I put 15 in my head and counted backwards 14, 13, 12. They could say, I know that 12 and 15 both have a stack of 10, and 5 minus 2 is 3. Any reasoning that they're using to figure it out is fine. And then on the flip side, we also want them to explain that between 8 and 12 was 4 steps away, and that's why 15 was actually closer. The second thing we're practicing is using what we've learned about place value to complete mental math. So I'll give you 2 different examples. The first one will be easier than the second. Students will see an equation, something like this, and it will ask, what is 40 plus 30? Students do not have any writing utensils during this. As I said, it is mental math. So we're practicing this in school as well, but what we want them to understand is that because these are easy numbers with just stacks of 10 and no zeros, that they can add the 4 and the 3, which is 7, and then just add that 0 back. So they could say 40 plus 30 is 70. I know this because I added the 10s and then I added the 1s. It does get a little trickier when they start adding 1s in. So not only will they ask simple numbers like 40 and 30, but they might also ask, what is 44 plus 26? So again, students do not have any writing utensils to figure this out. And this is pretty advanced math, or what you would think of doing in first grade. But the kids are actually really getting a handle on it and are doing a great job of explaining. So just any more practice you can do at home is great. So what we're practicing with the students in this particular equation is to notice that in the ones place, these 2 digits together make a 10. So being able to, in their brains, understand that that 4 and that 6 make a 10. So I'm going to store that to the side, and now I'm going to go add the 10s. So 4 plus 2 is 6, but since they're in the tens place, it really means 40 plus 20 is 60. So by keeping that 60 in their heads and remembering that 10 that they held on to, they should be able to answer 70. So 44 plus 26 equals 70. This is definitely something that's going to take us the whole year to really master, but practicing those 10s and 1s and understanding how to group things in our head is really going to help students be successful not only on the number knowledge test, but very much so when they get to 2nd grade and 3rd grade. The stronger they are with mental math, the stronger they're going to do in years to come. It was a little bit longer than I had anticipated. I apologize, but if you watched the whole thing, I hope you were able to gain some insight into our 2 tests we'll be taking this month and what January standards we are diving into. Thank you so much for all of your support, and as always, if there's anything you need from me, please just let me know. Thank you.